Hello and welcome to another episode of Southern Gothic Creation, SGC. It's Joseph St. John here and my buddy Robert Baker. And today we're going to talk about the marvel of Marvel Comics. And there's nothing bigger than Marvel right now.
That is true.
I know you're just catching up on some of it. Am I not correct?
Yeah, I am reading a Marvel book called The Untold Story, and that's my second Marvel book. I forgot how I got into it. Joe and I had collected comics back in the day. I was a big collector, at least for a while, of Fantastic Four, which is a Marvel product.
Oh yeah, Marvel. Since 6 years old, I have been a Marvel freak. Just totally Marvel. And then now the movies are going on and it's huge. And you were looking at there about even adjusted for inflation. The Marvel movies are way up there. Now, if you don't adjust it for the Marvel rules of the world, but if you adjust it by today's dollars, other movies have sold more tickets, I guess would be the way of putting it. But Marvel's king right now. I do think some people are jealous. That's why I think you do feel some swipes at it.
Yeah, when I pulled it up, of course, this is Box Office Mojo by IMD Pro, but it has Avatar #1, Avengers #2, Titanic #3, Star Wars 7 was #4, Avengers Infinity Wars #5, Spider-Man No Way Home is #6, Jurassic World is #7, Lion King #8, Avengers #9, Fast and Furious 7 is 10, and then it goes on. But so basically there's 4 of the top 10 are Marvel movies.
Yes.
9 of the top 20 are Marvel movies. 11 of the top 25 of all time
are Marvel movies.
Except for when you start getting into adjusted for inflation, which Joe and I have many movies that we love and know. Yeah. But Gone with the Wind happens to be #1, and that was probably because in 1939 the tickets were 15 cents or something.
Well, one other thing too is that movie just got re-released. A lot of people, not trying to talk down to people, but a lot of people that are listening to this, if you're not older, don't remember that they would re-release things in the theater over and over again.
Yeah, especially when it got legs.
Yeah, I mean, they would go back, so you could make money off of it more than once. Whereas now you make your money off your DVDs, your streaming, and all of that. So there's some things on there. I think one of my favorite movies of all time, Dr. Zhivago, is in the top 10.
It is in there. So as many of the ones that we know and love.
Yes, there you go. But I think the Marvel movies stand on their own, and their success stands on their own. And I doubt there's ever been a franchise more successable than Marvel.
No. I mean, Star Wars comes close, and it's interesting. Avatar is #1 of all time.
Yeah, Avatar is a big movie. I mean, there's no ifs or buts about there. Now, here's another interesting thing. Go back into the day. We'll go back to the day when I was a little kid and we were reading comics, and I was definitely a Marvel fan first. Here's what I find interesting. It's 1968. That's a long time. And I'm getting into Marvel. I'm in the first grade and stuff. But DC is still the dominating factor. Batman and Robin, Superman, Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
And Marvel is the little engine that could.
Yeah.
Yeah, Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, Captain America, and they're just going at it. And then eventually, boom, Marvel takes over. Movies start. It's Batman and Superman. DC has got their light years ahead of Marvel. Matter of fact, Marvel's beginning products are very poor. Okay, it's not till they do the X-Men and Spider-Man, okay? But I think the early 2000s that, Marvel has a actual product that is selling. As a matter of fact, I'll take that back. Blade. Wesley Snipes' Blade.
Yeah,
would have been the first.
Yeah.
Would have been the first one.
And it was a surprise hit too.
Yeah. I mean, so you had that. But a lot of their movies were falling kind of flat. They weren't making that, they weren't resonating the same. And a lot of their TV product was pretty pedestrian. I like the Hulk one, with David Banner, as they referred to him, and Bill Bixby, and then Lou Ferrigno. The whole, you don't want to give me man. You won't like me, man. Okay. But it was a modified version of Hulk. Okay. Do not even look at the Spider-Man and the Captain America they did for TV. It was a utterly disaster.
Right.
It was an utter disaster. Okay, so it took Marvel a little bit to get off the ground. Really, the Marvel Cinematic Universe really takes off with Iron Man. Because remember, Stan Lee sold Marvel as piecemeal.
Yeah.
Okay. Spider-Man's by Sony, X-Men's by Fox. They're both in the fold now. I believe Disney bought Fox, so X-Men are coming. And then they made a deal with Sony to bring in the Spider-Man characters. But I don't want to get too lost on there. Stan Lee's a great guy, but some of his business decisions are poor.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were poor. Okay, they were just poor. That's why for kids in the 70s, they had to watch a Fantastic Four cartoon with Herbie the Robot. You got Stan Lee. Stan Lee had sold the rights to the Human Torch to somebody else.
Yeah.
And that's how you end up getting stuff like the Flintstones meet the Thing. I do believe there's actually a thing that's in Bedrock, but I'd never watched it because it just hurts my soul. Okay. Stan Lee made some questionable decisions, but over time, Marvel got their stuff back. And it's so weird because the movies did the same thing that the comics did.
Yeah.
Marvel starts off as timely. They go into Atlas. They then become Marvel, and then they fight and they fight and they fight, and then boom, they get them. Marvel makes a lot of bad decisions as far as how they handle their product. Okay.
And they're cartoonists, because they kind of pimp their cartoonists pretty bad.
Yes, if Jack Kirby was still alive and Steve Ditko was alive, they would say that was business as usual.
It was. The artists didn't keep the rights to their creations. I mean, it was pretty bad. But I mean, that was industry wide, because musicians got pimped back then, and
yeah, they really did. You know, we had a video about the good old days weren't always good, but they were rogue, and I liked some of that. But no, the good old days weren't always good, and they definitely pimped out their people.
Well, it's interesting because you love the Rolling Stones as I do, but you know, back in the day, the Beatles were at least more popular, and same with the DC Comics were more popular, but Marvel was rogue, that's for sure.
That's right, Marvel was rogue. Here's an interesting thing: Marvel did something though, you know, for all of the stuff there, they did one thing and it works, and that is Marvel created this Marvel universe in the comics that didn't come from the movies. Yeah. And what they did is where DC was in fictional places. They were in Star City and Central City. And of course, everybody knows Batman was in Gotham. Mm-hmm. And Metropolis had Superman. They had fictitious cities where these heroes were. And yes, they came together first as Justice Society and then Justice League. But the characters kind of had their own little universe. Mm-hmm. Marvel never had that. They immediately put all their superheroes in New York City. Mm-hmm. And they amazingly made sure that they all intertwined. It was not unusual to go to the rack to get your comics and see, oh my God, Spider-Man's in Daredevil or in this Avengers comics and stuff. There was always this pulling together, oh my God, X-Men are in the Avengers, there was all this pulling together. And one of the things that I wrote an article a couple of years ago, and I'll put a link down there. Comics probably weren't always for kids. I want to go to something because I mean, they had an idea of dealing with drama. Now I want you to put this in perspective at this time that I am 6 or 7 years old. I am in the first grade. Mm-hmm. And this is the first comic book I fell in love with. So hold on. Can everybody see that? That's Avengers 56. It's still 12 cents. Mm-hmm. Bucky is dead. Okay. Captain America has been involved in this flashback where he gets to relive their last day together where Bucky dies. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I'm gotta be 6 or 7. That's my favorite comic. That comic stayed on my mind so much that long after I lost my comic book collection, I went back to the comic store and I bought that one. And here is the follow-up, and this is what I'm talking about. He goes into this time machine, but on the way back, they all get trapped back in the early 60s, because this would have been late 60s. And it's the new Avengers versus the old Avengers. That cost my dad a quarter. That was a big time money back then. Yeah. Okay. Here's the interesting thing about this comic. I made sure I got this one too. I went back and made sure I bought it so I could hold it in my hand. Okay? I don't read it anymore. I got it in a bag of plastic. I don't know if it's worth much. It looked like whoever owned it was like me. They looked at it a lot, but it's getting to a point where it's frail. So when I do read it, it's on Kindle, but that's another story for another time. I remember these two comics from my childhood more than I remember most things. Okay. Here was another interesting thing, another one that I remember. Everybody figure out I'm a Captain America fan. Okay. Daredevil has this transformation where something happens to him and he ends up in a fight with Captain America because they're both in New York City.
Right.
Captain America is beating up civilians for charity. He's in these charity boxing matches where he beats up civilians for money.
Right.
Okay. Daredevil comes in. It's Daredevil's comic, and he still gets his butt handed to him by Captain America.
Isn't he blind?
He's blind. Yes.
So Captain America's beating up a blind guy.
Well, you know, he's not blind like that. He has supersonic senses. Okay.
All right.
Beating up a blind
Probably
guy.
not politically correct now, but
he's still blind. No, Daredevil's still blind and he's still big. His show on Netflix was fantastic. The Daredevil show on Netflix was fantastic. They canceled it, but it's coming back. But then again, Daredevil had his moments. At Daredevil 99, he's in San Francisco now, and he's dating the Black Widow, and they're sharing the comic book title. Hawkeye, this is where I love this because it wasn't for kids. Hawkeye is Black Widow's Black Widow is the ex-girlfriend of Hawkeye.
Gotcha.
So Hawkeye travels all the way to San Francisco to start a fight with Daredevil.
Well, and he used to be a villain, right? But now,
yes, Hawkeye was a villain. I love that costume. They have not. The Hawkeye does not wear a costume in the MCU, and I'm kind of disappointed. I like that. It's a little hokey. I understand, but I like it. Okay, but they had all the crossovers. You had Captain America going back to the 40s, back to his timely days. You had the Avengers fighting the old Avengers.
Right.
You had Daredevil getting in a fight with Captain America. Then later, Hawkeye's mad that Daredevil has his girlfriend and they get in a fight. DC didn't do stuff like this.
Yeah, and the beauty of Marvel, see, that's the thing is they had like a bullpen of these artists, and they would brainstorm and they'd come up with all these, and whatever sold got to hit the print, and then they'd cancel other ones, and they'd bring them back. So they have hundreds of characters, if not thousands, right?
Right.
Throughout for the last, so they started in the 40s or 50s. So they have 70 years of backlog of characters.
One smart thing they did was, let's say that somebody didn't sell and they had to cancel the order, or what they did with the X-Men where they put everybody in reprint, right? Even though X-Men was in reprint for years, X-Men would show up in fresh editions of other people's comics.
Right.
Doctor Strange, for whatever weird reason, Doctor Strange could not sell.
Right.
Doctor Strange is a great character. He was extremely popular with college people. He was kind of LSD hippy dippy character when Steve Ditko had him, right? But then he was into Defenders. He went to other comics. They had this way of, even when if somebody didn't sell, Nick Fury didn't sell, that in the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but he showed up in other people's comics. They had this way of taking care of their characters. And I thought that's why you had this gigantic success rate with some of these characters long after you thought they would have failed. I
What
mean,
I
literally, before X-Men explode, I think in 74, 75, they had been dormant for 6 or 7 years.
That was what I was going to say, is what I found fascinating, and that's what this book is so good about, is it tells that, so these guys created them in the 40s to 50s, these different characters, and some of them flew and some of them didn't. Some of them sold, some of them didn't. But then in the 70s, early and mid to late 70s, new cartoonists came in, and artists that came in and breathed life into it. And some of them were potheads and dropping LSD and all this other stuff. So that permeated the freaking characters in the comics, right? So there was hallucinogenic stuff going on, and I think there was a governmental body that was poo-pooing some of the.
When they loosened up the comic code, and we don't want to get lost on the comic code, we'll do a whole episode on that.
Right.
When they loosened up the comic code and you allowed to have little monsters involved and all of that, a lot of cool things happened. First off, you got to be able to bring monsters in.
Right.
Werewolves and vampires and zombies, and that's always good. That sells. They also loosened up some of the moral stuff. Now, even as a kid, you're like, let's see, we got Warlock. We got the son of Satan. Then I go, right? He's a hero. I was a little questionable about him. Okay. Ghost Rider with that flaming head, right?
Right.
They were able to go there. And I think that also with the new writers, with being a little daring. Remember, there had not been a Black superhero that had his own comic book until Luke Cage, Hero for Hire.
Right.
They did that, and that was a good comic book, and it was mainstreamed. It wasn't something where, they laid it out there, man. It was a real comic book, real time, and with a real distribution. Just things like that were fantastic. And then there was just Werewolf by Night, Dracula, Frankenstein. They were able to do these things, the zombie. They were able to do these things. I think that they brought Conan the Barbarian in, and they did all this. I think that new talent were able to breathe life into old characters too. Okay. Spider-Man, X-Men, all that stuff. But it gave them all this other outlet. And I think that was exciting for the young guys. And for all the young men and young women, and there were, I just got done watching a documentary, a lot of women involved in these things, right? Not as many as you probably have now or many as you should, but there were women involved, and you were getting all of these different kind of characters. The Cat was a female, Ms. Marvel, MS Marvel, right? And just some really cool stuff. And I think that they were able to push through a lot of these new ideas because the comic code drawed up.
This was a stretch, and I'm not sure whether I'd go there because I haven't read enough comics to know it, but Lee was trying to, and I don't know whether it was Lee, but maybe it was, what's the K guy that went, the draftsman or the drawer? Kirby. Is that they were trying to say that cartooning was literature, or comics were literature. And I believe maybe that is true, because some of it, at least when it was reaching the 70s and 80s, they were being influenced by Eastern arts. They were being influenced by religion. They were questioning different things, kind of like what you and I have said about comedians, that they are the last truth teller to power, right?
Right.
And that's why, I feel like our society is a little bit under attack, because they're, slapping comedians around on the Oscars, but that's another story.
And I think that's what happens when you get too much political correctness. I'm all for keeping people accountable, but I'm not big into the counterculture.
Right.
But a good thing is that, it was, I will tell you, DC didn't join the parade of social consciousness till the 70s. That's a fact. And that was really done with Green Arrow, and we'll do this. We'll do something on DC, but Green Arrow and Green Lantern and Speedy and some of that. And I don't want to get too lost into that. They did some fine stuff, but it was in the 70s. I think that as soon as Marvel got involved, especially Fantastic Four, as they began to grow that series out, I would say almost from the beginning, they were going to be socially conscious. Okay. And I just actually think that was just their mindset. They had that. I think they had a bigger, broader view of creating these alternate worlds. And I give Jack Kirby all that credit. I'm not trying to take anything away from Stan Lee, who I love and respect. And as a kid, he was the man. But as I get older, you're like, a lot of that was Jack Kirby.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of that was Jack Kirby drawing. A lot of that older world, you know, stuff like, being out there with the Silver Surfer and, Galactus and all of that stuff and the Watchers. That's Kirby, man.
Right.
And he brought it to life. I did. I'm not saying Stan Lee didn't have anything to do with it. And I don't like the Stan Lee haters that act like he did nothing. That's just not true.
Right.
I just think Stan was a shameless self-promoter and sometimes.
He was that.
And I think he went too far. He didn't
get talented, but
he's a talented, but he went too far. And I think that's why people like Kirby and Ditko eventually left and were not happy with Marvel.
Right.
I don't think they were, I don't think they wanted to act like Stan Lee didn't do anything, but you didn't do it all.
Right. So this episode was the Marvel of Marvel, and Marvel is now permeating our culture as far as
the nerds won. Marvel's king.
Yeah. And I suspect that they'll reach market saturation probably in the next couple of years, because as we said, how the top 10, top 20 of the movies are, and that's usually how it goes.
Yeah.
They peter out, overexposure.
I think there's that possibility. I think the only thing that I would say about Marvel, I sometimes worry that they could go, you can't take your politics, whether you're left or right, and go too far with them, because you got to try to make everybody happy. And I know that's not a popular thing to say now, but they're a business. Okay.
They are.
I think that they could possibly make a horrible movie. I don't think that's out of the equation. Okay. I do worry about oversaturation. If there's anything I think Marvel has going for them, is they're the only one doing anything. Star Wars is doing some stuff, and don't get me wrong, and there's some others, but the average movie, it isn't, what are they doing? Marvel's dominating, and there's people that don't like it, and I think they're jealous.
And they've been purchased by Disney, so I don't know whether their culture will survive or whatever. But
well, they got purchased by Disney a while back. The thing with Disney is, there's all the different brands. Star Wars is Disney, and I don't know how much all of their politics permeate everything. And I'm not willing to say how that's going to be. I think that in our culture, we seem to be on a pendulum. We'll go one way, we'll be super conservative, then we'll go another way and be super liberal, and then we'll swing back and forth. Let's just break down. That's all we're looking.
Right.
So I think there's a lot to be said for that. So we'll see. I worry about, if I'm a Marvel fan, a lot of the characters that they have used, have a long history. Now let's see, when they bring the next level in there, can they do the same sort of things and respect it and get it done?
Well, they did the Moon Knight, which was my favorite character, and I thought he'd never see the light of day.
Yeah, so he's there.
Kind of very obscure, and he's got a series actually going.
Yeah, he's on Disney Plus. So there's a lot going on. So and there's more Disney than you could watch. Excuse me, there's more Marvel than you could actually watch.
There is, because I've got Disney Plus, and the Marvel channel is, you've probably got 100 movies on there.
Yeah, I take everything you got, but I try to watch all the ones that I can.
Right.
But I haven't. When I watch, I'm holding on right now. I don't want to fight the crowds, but I want to go see the Doctor Strange movie. Probably should have seen it already, but that's not happening right now.
Right.
So we'll do it, man. But we're gonna do this. We're going to go into some of this stuff like the comic code and that effect, and we'll go into DC. And DC's a mess. DC's a mess. I'm just going to be honest with you. I don't think their movies are all that bad. I just don't think they're all that good outside the Batman.
Man,
haven't
Batman.
seen-
Have you seen the new Batman one?
No,
The Bat-
I've got that coming as soon as I can.
Go see that. Go see
Yeah,
that.
I've got that one there. So I'm a little behind the 8 ball here, but I think the Batman movies that they did, those are extremely popular. But the DC universe has been a bit of a problem.
Yeah.
And we'll see how that works. Though I do want to clarify, Christian Bale's Batman's I love. I love the Michael Keaton stuff.
Yeah.
The 2 after Michael Keaton, everything got a little off.
Right.
So you go there, but they'll get it straight. I think that just like I said, it just seems to be history. Marvel's number 2 knocking at the door, then they just smoke them.
Yeah.
We'll go there. So until next time,
In spite of themselves, actually.
sometimes in spite of themselves.
Yes.
You got it. So until next time, people, we'll get back more in here, talk a little cultural stuff. And until then,
So yeah.